So, hello everybody. Today I am so excited to announce that I will be interviewing Wazhma Mojaddidi, who is an all-around extraordinary person and multi-talented. But today she'll be talking about just the legal profession, because she is by profession a lawyer, and she'll be giving us some insight on what's going on legally and how this coronavirus has impacted everyone. So let me invite Wazhma in to be talking to her in a minute. She's coming on in a minute. Hey,
Hello.
Wazhma.
Hey, hello. Good
How are you?
afternoon.
So
I'm
we're
well,
talking
thank
to
you.
Wazhma Mojaddidi, like I said, all person extraordinaire, but by profession, she's a lawyer, and she'll be giving us her feedback on what's going on with the coronavirus and the legal system.
Please. Okay. No,
So,
I appreciate the kind words, and certainly we are in some odd times right now, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have or anybody who's watching has. So let's get
okay,
started.
so I
Yeah.
know that, well, like I mentioned earlier, that you are a lawyer. Can you tell us a little bit about what area of law you practice?
Sure. So I'm based in California and I'm licensed in California. So I do all family law related matters, which are divorces, custody disputes, domestic violence restraining orders, contempt actions, basically anything in the family law courts.
How has this pandemic and social distancing and businesses closing, how has that affected your practice so far?
So my practice in itself, I am a solo practitioner, but I have an associate attorney who works for me, and I have some staff. We've reduced our hours, and it's primarily because the courts have closed. In Sacramento, where I am, there are about 4 surrounding counties. All of the courts, all of the surrounding counties have essentially closed down, but for very limited purposes. And so that has certainly impacted the work that we're doing right now.
Seems like the reception's a little bad. Can you repeat that?
I
You just
think
cut
there was
off a little bit.
something. Yeah, I think something happened because I didn't hear a question. I spoke for a while and then I got silent. So what did you hear?
I didn't, you said that the courts were impacted. So can you tell us a little bit about how the courts have impacted and that impact on your practice?
Oh, yeah. So you didn't hear any of my response? Should I go ahead and give my response to that question? Got it. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, so my response to that question is that the courts, so where I am in Sacramento County, there are several surrounding counties, and pretty much every major court and every major county has shut down almost all court functions and only remained open for emergency type of orders that relate to children, related to search warrants for criminal matters, domestic violence restraining orders. So for very limited purposes, the courts are open in very limited ways. They're not even allowing attorneys to make personal appearances anymore. We're getting almost daily updates with different rules. So there's been a severe impact on the legal system, and it's just unprecedented.
So right now you said that they're dealing with emergency cases. Does that include custody issues as well and dealing with children?
Yes, in fact, I was in court last week on some emergent. This is at a time when they were allowing in-person emergency hearings. So I was in court on that date, and pretty much every emergency hearing had to do with COVID-related issues, and it had to do with child custody issues and how this is impacting the custody parenting plans, visitation plans between parents who currently are sharing custody of their children.
Wow, people don't normally think about this because people are being isolated now, and so this will definitely affect people that are sharing custody with their children. How is that being handled? What
So
is
what
there
the
a
court,
standard practice?
What the courts are doing, essentially what they're encouraging is for attorneys, especially when there are parties that are represented by attorneys, that attorneys really implement best practices in trying to negotiate things into being reasonable. So for instance, if let's say you share custody and you exchange the children in the middle of the week, you should know that that is essential to going and meeting at the exchange point, because a parent having custody rights is essential. And so you cannot use the orders for self-isolation to say, I can't leave my house, so I'm not going to come and exchange the child. So the courts are certainly encouraging reasonableness there. And I'm advising all of my clients who are asking those questions to be reasonable. Now, where the issues arise, and this is really unfortunate for parents who share custody where one parent lives out of state, is that spring break is something that's usually really something that is that a non-academic parent looks forward to. And so because of the travel advisories and the concerns regarding that, all of my clients who live out of state who have spring break time are not able to exercise that parenting time. So the courts have really decided that it is not reasonable to expect the child to travel during this time. And some people are saying, well, children aren't affected, and very early on that was an issue, but now people are understanding that it's so widely spread that anybody is potentially harmed by exposure.
Right, right. And what about like grandparents taking care of kids, and then these kids going back and forth and exchanging, going from home to home due to the visits? How is that impacting them? Is that affecting you guys at all?
It is. I've had a couple of cases where, for instance, my client would say, hey, when I drop the kid off, I know that the kid is going to be going, and because they visit with their grandparents with the other parent, and I am concerned about that, about potential exposure. And, all we can do is really just encourage our clients to communicate with the other parent, and the standard in California is always what's in the children's best interest. And so, you certainly want to balance what's best for the child as well as what's best for the public, because while your child may not be impacted, certainly there are public interests involved in some of these decisions. So, overall, there has been kind of fear and unknowns and questions. I have one client who is so upset and freaking out about this whole thing that she has refused, against my advice, to do the exchange. She's got primary custody, and the dad sees the kid on the weekends, and she's saying, Wajma, I'm telling you that that's what I understand you're advising me to do the exchange, but I'm just not going to do it. I don't feel safe. So for me, as long as I advise her in writing, she can do what she wants, and then it's going to be up to him if he wants to get in front of a judge to try to make this an emergency issue and say, I'm being denied my rights to see my child. And the courts definitely don't want to see those types of issues come before it when they're so limited in their resources.
Wow. I know that the hospitals are getting overwhelmed with domestic violence and child abuse right now. Those cases are when people are cooped up in their homes, and this is really testing out people's stress limits. And so what are you seeing regarding child abuse and domestic violence in these cases, or what are you hearing about maybe not
so
directly impacted?
Right. So I do, one unfortunate thing that in our local law enforcement is that domestic violence restraining orders, like let's say my client has a restraining order against her ex. She's had that restraining order for now, this is one example I'm giving you of a case. She's had the restraining order for about 6 months now, and he has continued to violate it. And every time he violates it by contacting her, she will call the police. And the frustrating thing in our community is that the police don't typically do much about it. What they should be doing if they're enforcing a restraining order is they actually have to arrest the person, but they haven't been doing those things. And so surprisingly, this past weekend, so wait, today's Wednesday, I think Monday night, after she contacted the sheriffs and said, here's, he's contacting me again, he's violating the restraining order. He was actually arrested. And this is the first time in my many years of practice that I have seen local law enforcement actually enforce the restraining order. And so that's a good that's come out of it. Maybe it's because they have more time on their hands, the police, there are less people out, there are less crimes, that they're actually doing something about it. But in that case, it was good news. Now, whether or not there has been an increase in restraining order cases, I'll tell you honestly, I probably have maybe 15 to 20 prospective clients call me per week seeking representation in all aspects of divorce and domestic violence. It has significantly come down in the last couple of weeks. And so I have not had anybody call with regards to domestic violence issues. Maybe it's because they are calling the police. So the police may be trying to enforce and maybe arrest an assailant, but because they're aware that the courts are so limited right now in resources, that they're not seeking counsel to get a restraining order. Because if you do call the police and they get arrested, then there is an automatic criminal protective order that is issued that usually doesn't last too long, and that's why people go to the civil court and get restraining orders. So maybe the police are enforcing this more, and it's not really coming to court. I think primarily because there's just such limited resources. So in Sacramento County, we probably are the biggest county in the area. There is one department, one judge in the entire county who is processing emergency emergency orders. And in order to ask for those orders, you have to file the papers into a Dropbox. And so it's so limited right now that I think people maybe are just realizing I'm not going to get any relief from the court. What do I expect once the quarantine and the self-isolation is over? Well, I expect, and actually many of my colleagues were on a listserv, family law attorneys, everyone expects that we are going to be inundated and extremely busy. And sure, there are these memes that are, that I've seen that are funny that says, divorce lawyers are excited about what's going to happen after this because people are cooped up together. But the reality is that there is some truth to that. The reason why it's funny is because there is truth to that. People will, and this is, your area, of course, that there is stress and anxiety and unknowns and fears. And if you have all of that, and maybe not such a solid relationship with your spouse, then you're probably not going to stay together. And of course, one of the biggest reasons that people divorce is financial stress. And so the financial stress is apparent in many people. I know this is not responsive to a specific question you asked, but a lot of my cases involve child support and spousal support orders. And so if people are losing their jobs and they can't afford to make that money and pay the support, then you're going to end up with one spouse who may have zero income to support children. And so we're seeing a lot of those financial issues, but they're not really emergency issues, and we can't get any relief from the court. Everybody just kind of needs to do what they got to do and continue to live on edge until we open the courts back up and we have some more answers with how long this whole thing's going to last.
Well, that's why I wanted to also talk to you today, because a lot of people are focusing on, the medical issues and the hospitals and doctors being inundated, but there are other professions being affected as well. And so what you're talking about with family law, with divorce, with custody, with domestic violence, and then potential issues backlogging the courts in the future, this is affecting people on so many levels. And so getting your perspective is really important and something we don't really think about. And then also just the mental health aspect of it, like you said, this is pushing people to the brink, and then so they are making irrational decisions. Maybe this will clog up the courts in terms of violence or making bad decisions or taking it out on their family. And so this is something you're going to be seeing in the future, probably more and more.
Well, yeah, and I did want to kind of give kudos to the mental health professionals, especially those in our legal community who help out with a lot of these custody issues. They have actually all kind of formed an alliance and wow. told us family law practitioners and said, hey, listen, while we can't have in-person meetings with people, we know that your clients are going to be going through some stressors, and we are available to help mediate issues because you guys can't go to court. And so I have reached out to some of those colleagues and asked for their assistance in resolving some issues, and they have provided an invaluable resource, and they are the experts that we turn to in our cases. And so the fact that they have come to the table and offered assistance during these times is also great. And the fact that you're doing this and alerting people to the issues is really important. So I do appreciate it as well.
Yeah, wow. So you were talking a little bit about the long-term impacts, like just after everything is over, the quarantine is over, the courts are open. Do you see some positive and negative things that you're dreading or anticipating will happen after this quarantine is over?
Well, I'll start with the positive. The positive is that maybe for those people, for those parties who would literally come to the courts and call their attorneys over every little issue, once they now know that, hey, I can't do that and I have to limit it, not only because of the financial aspect of contacting your attorneys, but I can't even get in front of a judge. Maybe it's allowing these people to resolve issues on their own, do it amicably, co-parent.
Or seek mental health support.
Exactly, right. No, that's definitely true. And I do have some cases where they have gone to therapists to resolve issues. But yeah, I mean, I think it's forcing people to try to work these things out on their own without the stress of litigation. The negative effects, I think, are going to be, it's going to be a nightmare. Just to give you an example, this week I was supposed to be in court every single day. And so all that I have received is, last week I got a notification for each of those cases that my case is off calendar and it'll be continued to a date to be determined. The problem with that is, if that happens for every single one of my cases where I don't even know what date it's going to be set to, this delay is going to push everything out to where people who were relying on results and decisions now are going to be impacted. For instance, I have a client who his wife took the child to Virginia, left, and we filed a motion to have the child returned because it was like an abduction, and it was supposed to be set for hearing this last week, but the hearing didn't happen. And so now the child is there in Virginia, and he wants the child to come back before the next school year at least. And I don't know if we're going to have a full hearing and a full trial before that time comes around. And he's absolutely frustrated. But those kinds of decisions that needed urgent kind of resolutions from the court are not going to happen. Everything is being continued out. Everything is going to be pushed out. The calendars are going to be a nightmare. And I really don't know how the courts are going to fix this. But it's a major stress on the entire legal system.
I'm also thinking about my patients that have filed for divorce and hoping that the divorce will finalize soon, and yet they're living in the same home. They can't really do anything. Now they're quarantined together. What are they supposed to do? I mean, this is going to really push back their proceedings as well, isn't it?
Oh, of course. Like, if you're looking to get first of all, in California, you can't get a divorce in less than 6 months. And so now, because of there are mandatory processes, mandatory deadlines, everything's being pushed. You are not going to get that divorce as quickly as you think you are. So everything's getting delayed, and people just need to realize it and try to manage the stress and anxiety that comes with it, and just know that the police are still available, law enforcement is still available if it gets to a point where there's a violation of the law or an abusive situation. Absolutely.
And I know that a lot of mental health professionals are inundated as well. And this is not just because on the basic level, the anxiety is rising in a lot of people, but so a lot of mental health professionals are dealing with that. But at the same time, reach out to mental health professionals and get stress management strategies, help you with communication skills. Maybe this can just help you manage until you can get that divorce finalized, or at least cope with the situation that you've been forced to deal with? So,
well, I think one of the realities of the divorce process is that in the very beginning, tensions are the highest. People, I mean, what are you fighting over? You're fighting over money and children, and those are the two things that people really hold very dear. And so tensions are so high in the beginning that in a lot of my cases, by the time we're kind of have gone through the 6-month process or even longer, people tend to start, becoming more reasonable and amicable, and they've moved on and they don't really hate the other person anymore. That, what you're talking about is, to the extent that you can relieve those tensions that you have because you still have to live with this person, or you have the unknowns of when all this is going to resolve, I think it's a great idea to go seek intervention by a mental health specialist who can help you deal with that initial tension and anxiety. Because if in every divorce, if people came to the table totally reasonable and said, let's just be reasonable and let's not fight this out, then I wouldn't have that much business, honestly, if that's how people dealt with their cases early on. So we are thankful for people like you, and I encourage my clients to seek the professional help if I think they need it.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, as an anxiety specialist, all week I've been focusing on self-care and staying calm and not panicking. So I know you and your family are coping with all of this using humor, but how are you dealing with self-care, and how are you guys coping with all the school being out and all the kids being home? How's everything going with you personally?
Oh, well, me personally, I mean, it's great. My husband and I, or actually a lot of our friends and family, joke with the fact that we spend too much time together. So we usually would try to meet up for lunch several times a week. We do really, really enjoy each other's company. We spend a lot of time together. So this is not shocking us as it is some of my other family and friends who are just like, I just can't do this. I can't be with my spouse this much, which is okay. I mean, some marriages have healthy relationships because you two are able to go and do your own thing. So for me, it's not a big difference with my husband, but I come to the office still a couple days a week. I have less people in my office than I do at home, and it's literally in my car, straight into my office with gloves, sanitizing everything, and then back home. And then my children are all home, and I'm lucky because I have 4 kids, and they're teenage years. They love each other's company. They have each other. They play games. They go out to the park, and we do family activities. So this is it's a good time for us. We're all kind of enjoying it, but there are times when everybody needs to kind of retreat into their own rooms and get away because the human interaction might be a little too much.
So do you have any self-care strategies you want to share that have been helpful for you and your family?
We cooked together. One thing that we did, and an idea that I had, was to say, let me assign projects to each of us where you have to basically teach a class. And the first topic is going to be something you're passionate about, something you know about, that you don't have to do any research. You can just get up and do it. And my kids amazingly all took it very seriously. They created PowerPoint presentations. My son taught about cooking techniques. My daughter, who wants to be a doctor, taught about the human body. One of my sons who has a love of music did kind of an introduction to music. And then my youngest daughter, who loves TikTok, actually did a presentation about TikTok dances, which was funny. And so for the next presentation, we just put down a bunch of topics that we wanted to hear about, and we put it into a bowl, and then you randomly take that topic, and now you have to do research and teach it. And so it's a fun activity. It requires, it gets our brain going, and it's educational, and it's fun, interactive. So that's one thing we're doing. And we're cooking together. My husband and I have not gone with our kids, but our kids are going out and taking some walks and going out to the park and stuff. And so Other than that, I think it's just we're all on the edge of our seat waiting to get out and move on with our lives. But yeah.
I think one thing you guys do is you have a good sense of humor, and the whole family likes to do fun things and enjoy things. I mean, what you're talking about educational wise, I mean, a lot of people are so focused on worksheets and getting the work done and textbooks, but you're teaching them more about life and learning than any textbook can. So I think that's really wonderful. And then using humor and family time to do it.
Yes, yes, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, in order to deal with, I guess back to the self-care question, is to not to focus on the anxiety and the stress. We have to make the best of it. We have to laugh together. My daughter, who's a senior, is very bummed out about the fact that she's been, lost out on the best part of her senior year and that she can't hang out with her friends. But she's also looking forward to going away to college. So there's some positives there. But yeah, we have to enjoy each other's company and laugh and make the best of it.
One thing I want to stress is that the kids are also stressed about this. They're, like you said, missing out time with their friends. They're missing out their routines. They're missing out the socialization at the school. And for us to freak out and stress them out even more at home because we're stressed out by whether cleaning or focusing on school and just being very rigid about things, that's really increasing their stress level too. So we need to make sure that we're having fun and relaxing. And I love that you're doing that with your kids.
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us and shedding some light on how this is affecting the legal system. I think it's really important. We don't think about that often, but this is definitely impacting us legally. And so good information. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. And I did you see that sign behind me? It says, "I may be wrong, but I doubt it."
Yeah.
I actually believe that. No, I'm just
we
kidding.
Know.
Okay, anyway, if you know me, you know I mean that. Anyway, thank you so much, Nafisa. I appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and we'll stay in touch. Okay,
All
bye.
right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So there you guys have it. Wazhma Mojaddidi sharing with us her insight on how the legal system is impacting us during this COVID outbreak and this pandemic. So there are legal ramifications if you guys have issues that you're dealing with, if stress is really having an impact on your life and you're not able to reach the courts to resolve your divorce cases or child custody cases. The other outlet would be to reach out to mental health professionals and help you deal and cope with the stress level. So don't hesitate to reach out to mental health professionals and get some mental health support if you need this during this time. And again, DM me, message me if there's anything that I can do to help you guys. So looking forward to hearing from you guys, and thank you for being here and sharing this video with other people that might need it. Thank you.